on live.
My name is Abina Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, Mount Nimba to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pokondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia, yeah, 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 yeah. From Monday to Sunday. From Monday to Sunday, it's focus on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information. Talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday. Focus on.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another session of Focus on Liberia. I am your co-host, Gabriel Carter. In the studio with me today, I have my co-host, William King. And today we have a special guest to talk about today's topic. Mr. Phillips is an energy expert, but I will allow him to introduce himself because I don't want to do him injustice by, missing anything on that front. Mr. Phillips, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. It's a privilege to maybe pick your brains on some of the the issues plaguing the LEC, and most importantly, the country as a whole. In terms of how we can advance our energy sector forward. So again, welcome. To Focus on Liberia. As we usually do, please take this. Maybe for those who don't know you, our audience. Maybe you can take the next minute or two or three to introduce yourself for us, please.
Well, Gabriel, thank you so much. Thank you to the team and the platform Focus on Liberia for the opportunity once again. I'm no stranger to this platform. I was on this platform last year with Mr. Dennis Jah, where we talked about the energy sector, electricity, during the campaign for president, where I serve as the senior policy advisor for energy, for electricity, economic growth, and national development for the Robert Franz Morris campaign, where he ran as an independent. And our platform was basically electricity being the foundation for Liberia's future, to build a great, strong, robust, nationally deployed infrastructure of energy that you see behind me, to serve as the foundation for this country's future to be built upon, so that all of its citizens across this country will be able to realize their full potential and be meaningful partners and contributors to build, to expand, to grow our economy, grow our nation, and to play a very competitive role within the Minor River Union, ECOWAS, and the African Union, and the global community as a whole. I work in the energy sector. I'm based in Houston, Texas. I work for a global company where I provide a lot of energy infrastructure, electrical equipment to the power generation, power transmission, power distribution sector, and also into the oil and gas sector as well, from from drilling to production to midstream transport. And I have a vast background in electricity in the energy sector. And I specialize in electrical power at the University of Houston, Houston's University here in Houston, Texas. So I have a very, very deep, wide, and high background and experience in that sector. And it's from that position, from that standpoint, that I contribute and discuss this, because I believe wholeheartedly that energy is the focus. I'm married, 5 kids, very happy family, happy wife, happy home here in Houston. And I just love the energy sector and understand that it is, and it must be, it should be the number one thing to move this country forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. I couldn't agree more. Well,
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're very excited about this. This is part 2 of Liberia Electricity. All things electricity is what we're going to be discussing here. If you're watching it, please click share. This is going to be a very interesting show. We got somebody that's very knowledgeable. We look forward to picking his brain on how we can move forward. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of things going on in that sector. We covered in the first part a little bit. We have a change in the managing company, the managing director. We have the MCC funding, which has ran out. We got the situation going on the Capitol Hill. So we're interested to know where's the budget, how things are going to be happening. We see also that they've increased in revenue and so forth. So all of these things we're going to discuss, and that basically have a piece in the pie of the puzzle for electricity. And so we look forward. We want to thank you, Connor Phillips, for joining us. And we look forward to this show, the platform, and how we can better be informed about electricity. Thank you, Gabriel.
no, great. Again, without further ado, let's jump into this discussion about energy. Mr. Phillips, I want to give you the stage to really talk about based on your experience and in the energy sector, and what you have seen so far into what has been the challenges of LEC in Liberia. Just give us an overview, a gross overview of what you think. What are your thoughts on the whole energy sector in general before we dive into the specifics?
Well, again, thank you so much. So starting off, this, I think the best way to look at this is to take the very, very high view of looking at the energy sector, as opposed to taking the lower view or the ground view. Because when you're on the ground, you can't see far. You can't see past the next building that stands in front of you. But if you go up 30,000 feet or 60,000 feet, you will be able to see or get a very, very high view and get a greater and a deeper and a wider understanding of this energy issue, this electricity issue. So let's take the 60,000 foot view. Energy, electricity in Liberia has always been, continues to be something that I think for most of Liberians, and when I say most of Liberians, meaning that all of those who come into office, leave office over the years, the decades, and since the country's founding, we really haven't had a deep understanding of the role, the importance, the critical role that energy has to play, must play in the fundamental building of this country and its future, and industrializing the country and creating jobs. And we haven't been able to connect all of the important dots to get that understanding of the role that it plays. And that's why we've been plagued with all of these challenges, these issues, because we continue to look at it in an abstract way, as opposed to looking at the different parts of the pieces of the puzzle and bringing them together so that we can get a holistic view, a deeper knowledge, deeper understanding of the role that it plays. So you've got people who desire to build homes, good homes, and they understand that I can't build this house for longevity until I build a solid foundation. But then when it comes to building Liberia, growing Liberia, expanding the nation, nobody wants to focus on the foundation. We should be energy, but everybody wants to put up the walls and do the roofing and, fill the house with furniture. And then all of a sudden the home or the house starts to sink.
Yeah.
And this is where we find ourselves perpetually, year after year. And so as a result of that, when you have that level of understanding coming into successive governments in the past, before the civil conflict, during the civil conflict, after the civil conflict, in the Reconstruction years that we find ourselves in now, you come to realize that the problem or that challenge really hasn't been addressed. There's no understanding as to why we find ourselves here today. And that's where I think, we have this disconnect, or we have this gap where, everybody wants the problem solved, but people don't understand how to solve the problem. So what we end up with here, Gabriel and William, is that you have all the wrong people in all the right places, and they ultimately make bad, uninformed, ill-advised decisions. And then worst of all, money is placed and put and invested in those bad decisions with the high expectations of getting good results. It never works out that way. So that's where we find ourselves where we are today as a nation, as old as we are. And we can't fundamentally get something so fundamentally right. And it just perpetuates itself from leadership to leadership, government to government, party to party, manager to manager. And it just, and that's why we got to get energy right. If we get it right, then everything else falls into place.
Yeah. Well,
that definitely, I agree. So, let's kind of break it down into maybe a little pieces that we can kind of digest, right? So, let's look at where we are by the numbers, right? I think to just kind of get a snapshot of this energy thing, LEC, as far as what's going on, right? So we got about, as of today, we have about 247,000 customers, right? That basically about 1 million people access to electricity, almost 900 employees. You got 338 kilometers of high voltage line. You have a demand of 73. You have 2,191 kilometers of low voltage line that connects to your house, and 3,102 transformers added. So by the numbers, we see that transformers have gone up from 2022, where it was at 1,300 to about 3,000. The substation capacity has been increasing from 80 to 200, and now we're definitely up there with some high numbers. The customers has definitely increased from about 170,000 in 2022 to this. So things are, it seems like there's a lot of movement up. But tell me, are we really in a space to continue based on where we are with the whole MCC heading out? Because they funded a lot of this current stuff we had. So are we in deep trouble here?
We are indeed in very big trouble. Why do I say we're in deep trouble? So let's go back to the numbers, the MCC report. Okay, let's just rewind this for a couple of years. Number one, we started off with this Mount Coffee Dam being built during the Tubman administration, right? So we built a hydropower dam. And from the design, from the conception, the design, the implementation, and the building of the hydropower dam. We started off with a hydropower dam, which is very important for most Liberians to understand, those in the diaspora, those back home as well. We started off with what is defined as a run-of-the-river hydro. When you have a run-of-the-river hydro, what it basically means is that you do not have a reservoir. So, and hydropower is based on a simple principle where energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another. So energy exists in the water in what we call kinetic energy. So in order to harness that energy in the water, you build a hydro. So when the water hits the turbine blade, which is the mechanical device, the energy is transferred from the water to the turbine blade or mechanical device, and then the energy is transformed from kinetic energy to mechanical energy. There's a shaft that connects to the electrical turbine to the generator, and then it is transformed along the shaft from mechanical energy to electrical energy, and then into the transformers, and you power up your city. So that's basically how hydro works. Right. So you have a run-of-the-river hydro, you have two challenges. And in a tropical country like Liberia, we have two seasons. We have dry season, we have rainy season. So when you have the rainy season, everything's fine. Why? Because you have enough water, and the water is at a level that hits the turbines. So when the water is high, everybody's happy. Rainy season, you have a lot of electricity. All your turbines are running, and nobody thinks about it until the dry season comes. And then there's this thing called evaporation that takes place. And then the energy, the water level drops. And when the water level drops, guess what? You cannot run all your turbines because you simply don't have enough water. So you can close your gates. You can close your gates because the turbines, each turbine, the water comes into the turbine through what they call mechanical or hydraulically, electrically, hydraulically operated gates that close and open. You can close the gates, and then what you do, you can then have one or two turbines running. But then what happens is your demand is still high. More people still need electricity, but guess what? Your supply, your generation capacity
is low,
has significantly reduced. So what you have to do, you have to load shed. You have to load shed. So you shed your load. You put the north side on for these amount of hours. You shut them off. You put on the east side. You shut them off for a couple of hours, and then you rotate it to basically ration the available capacity. Okay. With that foundation laid, then we come to the civil conflict. The hydro dam is looted, is ravished, blah, blah, blah. All of that is done. We all understand. And the MCC comes in to rebuild the hydro. And this is where the fundamental mistake was made. If you have engineers who work at LEC, who were participating in the discussion, of the rebuilding, the reconstruction, the rehabilitation of what? Of the Mount Coffee hydropower plant, which was fundamentally a run-of-the-river hydro. And you understood that those problems from the run-of-the-river hydro were still there. Then why did you reconstruct? Why did you rebuild? And why did you invest the money in upgrading, right? A run-of-the-river hydro where you ended up with the same run-of-the-river hydro, but the only difference there is what? You increase the capacity of your turbines, but you never build a reservoir. So basically, it's almost like, it's not even one step forward, one step back. We never even moved forward. So here it is. All of that money, $300 million, whatever it was invested in rehabilitating a Mount Coffee hydropower dam, putting in 4 turbines, 20 megawatts apiece to give us 80 megawatt capacity, right? Okay. Rebuilding all of that infrastructure. But guess what? We never ended up with a reservoir. So as a result of that, every rainy season from the time I was born, and each of you on here were born, we've always had rainy season and dry season. So as a result of that, the problem hasn't gone away. Okay, let's move forward. So now the Mount Coffee Dam is renovated, rehabilitated, new turbines put into place, turn on the switch, and guess what? Your demand increases. And demand is basically how many people are connecting to the grid. So
Annually,
now
right?
here it is. Yeah, you got more people connecting to the grid, and like you said, William, earlier, you're putting in more distribution transformers. That means you're connecting more load. So your demand continues to increase. But guess what? Your generation capacity remains the same, and you still haven't yet altered climatic conditions because you can't change rainy season and dry season. You can't do anything at the hydro because you still don't have a reservoir. So what do you think is going to actually happen when dry season comes? You got high demand, you got low water, but you got 80 megawatt capacity, but you can't meet the 80 megawatt capacity of supply to demand because you don't have enough water. So you end up shutting the gates and shutting down two turbines and go from a 73 megawatt demand to what? To a 40 megawatt generation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to go right back to power rationing. Okay. So fast forward, we get the Transco CLSG investment, which is the 225 kilovolt transmission line that cuts the country in half from Cote d'Ivoire, which is the new generation source, because they have oil and gas. They're an oil and gas producer. They've got natural gas turbines and a blend of solar, hydro, and natural gas generation. Five substations interconnecting to Mount Coffee. So we now have a solution that can alter, right? That we can now complement our generation capacity. So we have a thermal plant, 30 megawatts. But guess what? When you're buying diesel fuel and you're generating power and you're trying to sell it at 25 cents or 24 cents or 22 cents per kilowatt hour, it's not profitable. It's not profitable, meaning that you can't even cover your operating costs. But hydropower is very profitable when you can generate at maybe anywhere between 5 to 8 cents per kilowatt hour, sell it for 22 cents and be very, very profitable. You go to Transco CLSG. Transco sells you the power at 11 cents. They bring it into you for 2.2 cents. That means you're getting it at 13.2 cents per kilowatt hour. You sell it at 100% profit. The population is very profitable, but there's a catch. You got to pay the bill because it's not your power. So we have the solutions there, but again, we go back to the management team. Who do they understand the business of energy to be able to alter the dry season demand, low water, with the Transco capacity to augment that during the dry season? So the way our energy is supposed to work, rainy season, we go to 100% hydro, minimum Transco, right? We make an extreme amount of profits during the rainy season. Put aside revenue or capital, right, to cover our dry season needs. And when dry season comes, we reduce our hydro need, our hydro generation, and then increase it to what? To the Transco CLSG. And then that reserve capital that we put aside can cover the bill. That's how you're supposed to work. And then you can, over time, scale your investments in solar to augment and over time, reduce your demand or reduce your dependence, okay, or your reliance on the Transco side. That's how
those are good. I mean, in a perfect society, yeah. But let's kind of take a step back because we do have two individuals joining us. To Jimmy and Percy. Thank you guys for joining us. What I do want, and I want to pose this question to maybe Jimmy, is what were the factors, or why is it that we looked at when we didn't have any electricity? Why did we look at the rehabilitation as the Mount Coffee as one of the, I guess, low-hanging fruit, or that's the first step? Was there, during that context, was it political or was it just economical?
That's a good question. And Mr. Phillips, I really appreciate you going over some of the pains we suffered during this time. Yeah, you know, that rehabilitating, it was a decision made during Ellen administration, interim government Ellen. We were already out of there. And we had plans, though. We were supposed to be contributing to that CLSG, what Mr. Phillips is talking about.
The CLSG, yeah,
Yes,
Transco.
we were supposed to be. We were one of the initiators of that whole project. What we had planned to do, build staggered dams, like Melissa alluded to, have reservoirs and build staggered dams along the St. Paul that would augment our production. And when this rehab plan went into process, I believe it was under Harry Yuan's admin, and it wasn't well thought about. That whole dam, just like Mr. Phillips was talking about, it was built for a smaller population, a smaller demand, a smaller load, a smaller grid. So we had long outgrown it, even before the war. We used to augment it with diesel generation from Bouchard Island. And sometimes we even butt bills with bone mines, Firestone. What we will give them electricity during the rainy season, and during the dry season, they return the favor. So that's how we were balancing the act. But why the decision was not there wasn't enough forethought. And when I think about the amount of money, and let me be very honest, the amount of money they have invested in the rehab should have done way more than what it's. So there's something.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so you are going around the edges, but I understand, because I mean we've done about a $1 billion almost into electricity in Liberia. So maybe there's some political, there's some corruption and so forth. Percy, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Jim. I'm good.
Good. Anything you
I'm
want?
good, Bill.
Anything would you like to add into this space about before we got to where we are now? Is there anything that kind of touches any kind of spot from what Philip spoke or Eastman that you care to chime in on?
No, I agree. I'm in awe about with Mr. Philip and his control over this subject, because we don't have a lot of people. These are the people that we should be seeking out to get Liberia to where what its potential is, right? We're supposed to be seeking out these people, right? Devoid of politics and whatnot. But I agree with Mr. Phillips. My thing to him, I want him to go over me. I'm here to, as in my capacity as a student also, but I also want you to actually elaborate on the importance of the reservoir that we don't have right now, and the causation and the effect that is currently have on the I don't want to call it energy sector, because we don't have an energy sector. I don't know.
No, we do.
Yeah, I don't like to use the word energy, because when I think about energy, where I sit at this point, I'm not thinking only electricity. There are other things that has to that.
That's
right?
exactly right.
So I don't want to just say
correct.
energy, because I by now we should be having an energy in the sector there, but it's not developing one, and that's why I'm going to pick your brain on the importance, because you mentioned the hydro, and I appreciate how you went over what it means for us who don't like have understand those particular part of the economy well. So with a reservoir, what would happen if we had a reservoir? If a reservoir had been added to the Mount Coffee hydro dam, what would be happening right now?
Okay, so very good point. So let me try to break it down into smaller parts, right? So, like I said earlier, when you build energy systems, you design them from the concept where you must have a generation source.
Yeah.
So when you're doing a solar power solution, for example, your solar cells that you point towards the sky, they harness the energy from the sun rays. And like I said, the principle is energy cannot be created nor can it be destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another, So it comes from the sun as rays. The solar panels transform it into electricity. That's all they do. But then what happens is you got to store it, because the foundation for solar power is what? Is a stored energy system. So
Yes.
if you only have a solar panel on top of the house that
Mm-hmm.
without the battery, so the batteries serve as your storage system, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then what will happen is your solar system will work in the day, but then when night comes, your house is in darkness, but you have a partial solar system. So it's the same thing in hydro. When you go to the basis of a hydro power plant is a stored energy system. Where's the energy? The energy is in the water. So if you don't have a reservoir to store the energy which is in the water, then when you need additional capacity during the time when you have water shortages, you're not going to have any electricity. It's as fundamental as that. But again,
Okay.
if you don't have the right people to sit in those meetings, as Mr. Jimmy Eastman was saying, okay, if you don't have the right people sitting in the meetings to ask the critical question and say, hey, look, I mean, we've got $400 million here. We've got a population in the city here in Monrovia that would go for 250,000 people, but now we've got 1 million plus. If we build this hydro and we turn on the lights, everybody is going to improve, is going to have a need, a desire to improve their quality of life by what? Increasing demand and connecting to this grid.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to make, and hey, by the way, did anybody realize that we're a tropical country and we only have 2 seasons, dry season and rainy season? Do you know that we're starting off with a run-of-the-river hydro that doesn't have a reservoir? Should we invest the money in the
So
reservoir,
reservoir. Mm-hmm.
or should we invest the money into solar power, which was what? Solar power was still available during that time.
Mm-hmm.
You get my point? Because
Yeah.
again, one thing you've got to remember about hydropower investment, hydropower is not something you can buy on Amazon where you just go there and click and you want 4 turbines and you want this and you want that. No, hydropower requires feasibility studies, environmental impact studies. You're going to have to displace people, just like that picture that's behind Mr. Eastman. To build a reservoir, you're going to displace thousands of people because the basis of the reservoir is flooding. You're going to flood a massive geographical area. Where are you going to put those people? You're going to have environmental impact. So then you got to factor in the civil works. Then the mechanical turbines don't take 1 year to build. It takes sometimes 2 or 3 years to build.
Mm-hmm.
So the question now becomes, for a developing country whose population is young and who has to rebuild the economy, create jobs because you're coming out of a civil conflict, which is also ex-combatants, which present a major national security challenge. And you've got diaspora who want to come back to invest. Where do you put your money? So when those questions are, when you have the right people around the table, my thing is invest in solar. Why? Because you can roll out solar faster, and it is scalable. It is very scalable. You can start with 10 megawatts and you can deploy in 6 months, and you can just add additional capacity as needed, and you can meet your demand. So again, when you don't have the right people around the table making the right decisions, where in relation to money that's about to be invested. I mean, if you think education is expensive, consider
Try
ignorance.
ignorance.
Try ignorance. And this is
So
how we got to where we are today.
I have a follow-up question. I have a follow-up question, and I think William alluded to this, but I think I want to bring that question back on the table because I think you kind of touched a little bit on that, right? You mentioned that we could have built a hydro, right? Like a reservoir, which would have brought the capacity to the 80 megawatts. But instead, we ended up just rehabilitating the hydro, the turbines. Now, do you think that decision was made based on the level of capital available? Do you think they realized that if we want to build a hydro to a reservoir, we may not have enough capital in terms of the kind of money we have. So let's go with the easier aspect of that, which is to just rehabilitate these turbines, which will give us the bare minimum because we do not have the everything you talk about in terms of displacing people and doing
Mhm.
all those, I think it's capital intensive. And at the time that decision was made, I don't think we had that level of resources from a financial standpoint to be able to say, you know what, we just came from war, we're trying to start up, let's do this the best way we can, so that way we don't have to look back at it. That would have been the right decision, which I agree with. But do you think that decision was made based on the level of funding that was available, and they didn't have the capacity from a funding standpoint, so they said they opted to go to the easier
But
route, which
but
is to just
but, but
rehabilitate?
Mr.
Yeah.
Phillips, before you come in, I need to give
Mhm.
some contents here. I was on duty when the war came on July 19th,
Mhm.
and they captured us. We were basically we were operating both systems at the time.
Our
Mhm.
several wars now. You have to be specific. What war are you talking about?
We're talking about
1990.
1990, 1990,
Okay.
right? We're talking about
Okay.
1990. So we asked Prince Johnson, look, we have to open those gates. What Mr. Phillips was talking about. We have, you see, when the water comes, we dam up the water so it can flow
Yeah,
through the turbine.
that's exactly right.
And during the rainy season, it is abundant.
Yes.
And so we have to just open the gates so some of the water can flow.
Yeah, the spillway. It's called the spillway.
This spillage. So, but Mr. Johnson, Prince Johnson at the time, he didn't have the manpower to take us there. He was fighting Door, he was fighting Taylor, he couldn't go. So as a result, the whole dam was destroyed.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I know we're talking about rehabilitating. I want us to understand it was completely destroyed.
Mhm.
We had nothing. Okay. Then they started looting. They started taking the copper. They started looting the whole reservoir during the war. So there was nothing there. So I just want to lay that premise, Mr. Phillips, before you go
So
in there.
that add more premise to what I was saying in terms of, so it wasn't just about rehabilitating. There was more work that needed to be done, which I think I agree with you. They could have added, if they were forward thinking like you were, right? They could have added the reservoir, which would have made it more efficient. But I think, and you can correct me on here, maybe they were kind of limited in terms of the level of funding available, and also, like you said, the level of industry expert knowledge to really think, 10, 20 years ahead in terms of what the demand could have been.
Okay, so you bring up a very good point. So Gabriel, I will beat up on you more because you're the banking and the finance person on this program, right? And why would I do that? It's because whenever you have people who are looking donors, okay, because don't forget now at that time the MCC, the Millennium Challenge, what basically funding, funding U.S. government funding, taxpayers funding through USAID, right, through the U.S. Embassy. And they recognize how important energy, electricity is for the industrialization, quality of life, stimulating the economy, creating growth, and moving us in the right direction. So they recognized it. So again, this is where you've got to leverage your donor money as an investment in infrastructure that will give you what? A dividend, a payback, a return on investment. And this is
Correct.
why you need to have the right people in the right places so that when these decisions have to be made, where money has to be invested, you must invest money with a return. There must be purposeful, deliberate, and intentional with a return. But when money is not invested, then it is just spent. And when money is spent, there's not an intention for a return. And this is where we have a challenge. This is where we have the challenge. So if it was being looked at holistically, let me go back to that word, right? And this is where our energy sector is challenged. We're not looking at things from the perspective of investing. Everybody in the energy sector uses the S word, spending. We got to spend money on energy. No, you don't spend money on energy. You invest money in the energy sector with the intention, right, of getting a return. And what is that return? Jobs, diaspora investment, foreign investment, small Liberian businesses. And it increases your tax base. So you will be able
Even
to
cash flow.
reduce.
Right.
That's my point. So if you don't have those people sitting at the table who can look at this thing holistically from that perspective, then you only have people looking to spend donor money. And when that's how we end up the way we are today. Where we've got everything to be a robust, successful country and economy, but nobody understands the role that investment plays in the energy sector.
Well,
Go ahead.
And that's
go ahead,
something
Peter,
that
Percy. Sorry, go ahead, Percy.
And that's something that I think me and Gabby have touched on in this country. When what you're talking about is, and that's true. A lot of people don't. I don't think me personally, and that's where I probably have to diverge with the current model of energy, electricity generation that we have in the country, right? I don't think government is well placed, right, to be. They can regulate the industry, right? They can regulate the power industry and whatnot, but I don't think these SOEs as they are right now are well placed to get Liberia to the kind of energy generation that we need as a country, that we solve most of the problems. And this is not a Liberia problem. This is an Africa problem, by the way, energy, that the thing we're talking about, right? That will solve most of the problem that we have, right? I think it is time that we think about privatizing these sectors, right? Because that's where, bureaucrats that bureaucrats will use the word spending. Bureaucrats there to spend money, right? When you have private sector people, they're looking to generate
That's
return
exactly
on
right.
investment, right? They're looking to generate return on investment, and towards that end, they would be thinking outside. They not just want to spend money, but they will be thinking about how can we create this thing wherein we're going to return profit at a higher margin for our investors. Right, we could be anything, or we could have my public-private partnership model that we talk about. You want to create an investing class, right? You want to create an investing class. We should bring more Liberians in. There is money out there. We want to invest in this country, but what are the vehicles that we have, right? This could be a perfectly placed time for us to say, okay, let's transition this thing here, because the government, either way, the government still going to get her share of the money. Whether it's private, whether it's privatized or it's government rent, she's still going to get her money, right? She's still going to get the taxes and whatnot. So I just don't think the current model as it is, we're going to be here all the time. And that's why you see people never thought about building a reservoir and whatnot, because it was bureaucratic, right? The conversation around that time was, we want to get back to pre-war model, pre-war energy generation. They were not trying to increase or augment it in a way that would be provide utility in the future. They were more about where we were doing normal. As a kid, now we call that normal time. I don't know anything was normal about that days, but they call it normal time. So they wanted the conversation around that was like, we want to get back to pre-war model. Pre-war levels, right? And that's what that thing was, and that was the thinking that went into that. So pre-war model was what they wanted to get to. They were not thinking about augmenting it for today or tomorrow in the future. You know what I mean? So that's what happened. But that was what I'm going. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you very much. I think most of us, this gentleman is the marketplace. So we get straight to where the rubber hits the road. Okay. There's a difference between demand and need. Need is where you need something, but you do not have the ability to pay for it.
Yeah.
War in Liberia and all these different things, that bill for the hydro, the reservoir and everything was a beautiful need, but did we have the demand to be able to pay for it? As an investor, you're not touching that. There is no investor. If there was money to be made in Liberia with electricity, investors would have been crowding in that space. I want to hold that thought, Philip. Right. So at the very beginning, it's Was it feasible? Now we are in this other space now, and we have numbers. We don't play around over here. We have numbers here.
Okay.
Right now, the total debt that is owed for electricity is 25 million. 25 million. Put it back up, Gabriel. Put it back up, please.
I don't think I can.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. Right
It
there.
is $25 million. Okay. The collection rate for old debt is about 19-20%. The majority of the debt on here is owed by the government of Liberia, which is over.
That's not true. That's not true.
The majority of electricity debt.
Let me explain what has happened. Okay.
Excellent.
And then this, yeah. So
Go ahead.
I should have sent you guys some information. So, couple of things. You mentioned investment. So the first investor in the energy sector in Liberia after the conflict was Mr. He was the CEO and owner of IB Bank. Okay, forgotten his name. He used to work for Citibank. He used to be former President Salif's boss at Citibank. So he owned IB Bank. And the deal that was made between them and between IB Bank and LEC was to run the thermal plant. These were to bring in the fuel. So he financed the fuel in exchange, and that was an investment. That was the deal. It was a private sector investment where IB, through his bank, they would buy the fuel, and then in exchange, all LEC bills, but for all of his customers will have to be paid back to IB Bank to get his return on investment to buy more fuel. And that was the initial, and that's how today you find out that all of the LEC bills are paid where? At IB Bank. Okay, that's exactly right. So you got to connect the dots. This thing didn't just happen, spontaneously. There's a history here. Okay. The challenge in the energy sector as it relates to Liberia, okay, is that many Liberians do not understand the business of energy. Energy is a business. It is a multi-billion-dollar business. Why? Because no country, no nation, no economy, okay, can industrialize, can move forward, can create jobs, attract foreign investment and its diaspora without energy. But the challenge with Liberia is you don't have people who understand the business of energy and the energy sector to make the case. In the absence of people who understand the sector to make the case to financiers, the local banks, the Echo Bank, the UBA Bank, the GT Bank, and the other banks, then you don't have people who are, then the bankers would not even consider the sector. They would not consider the sector. Because if the banker is in the country and he wants to profit with more depositors, he's depending on economic growth and job creation and the private sector to grow for him to get more depositors. You get my point, okay? Mm-hmm. Government depends on the private sector to grow, to get more tax dollars.
I want to tax it back, yeah.
That's exactly right. So it is, and that's why it is so essential that understanding and competence and knowledge be brought to the energy sector, because the energy sector is one of the most lucrative sectors for growth and development. Look at the telecommunications sector. The average Liberian today, when he wakes up in the morning, the first thing he has to do is to buy data for his smartphone. Why? Because he understands the importance of communications. You get my point. Okay, so now let's go to the debt. Let us not forget.
Yeah, well, can you bring up that so that we have what we're talking about? Go ahead, Philip.
Yeah. On what point? So
you're talking about
the debt. So if you go, there was a letter. Let me see if I can find this letter. The CIE, Cote d'Ivoire Electric, CIE, who is the generation entity in La Cote d'Ivoire. So One thing you have to understand is that Transco, CLSG, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, CLSG. Transco CLSG is not a power generation entity. It is a transmission. It is no different than a DHL. It delivers power. That's all they do. DHL does not put the letter in the envelope. They just bring you the envelope with whatever is inside and hand it over to you, and you sign for it. That's all Transco does. So Transco is the transmission entity, right? And CIE, Cote d'Ivoire Electric, is the generation entity. So Cote d'Ivoire generates the power. Transco transmits and moves the power through 5 substations in Liberia, 5 substations in Sierra Leone, and 4 substations in Guinea.
Yes.
But when you buy your power from La Cote d'Ivoire, from CIE, in order for Transco to be profitable, they're going to charge you a transmission fee. And that fee is around about 2.2 cents per kilowatt hour. You get my point, okay?
Yes.
So when you buy your power from La Cote d'Ivoire, that means you owe La Cote d'Ivoire money. And they sell the power to you for 11 cents per kilowatt hour. Transco puts the 2.2 cents per kilowatt hour on top of that. So when you get it for 13.2 cents, and you do your markup with a 100% profit margin at 26 cents, right? And you sell the power to people. So in order to keep this going, LEC must what? Must be able to collect the money and pay back the debt. You get my point? To get more capacity, to keep the capacity going. That's the way it works. So when President Boyka came into office, there was a standing debt from LEC to Transco, to CIE.
CIE.
And don't forget, before the CLSG was built, during the first administration of Madam Ellen Johnson, there were 3 cross-border grids. One line came into Ganta, one line came into Zwedru, and one line came into Plibo. That's exactly right. They were what they call the cross-border grids. These cross-border grids also had electric meters on them from the Ivorian side. It was not free electricity. You had to pay for it.
Yeah.
You had to pay for it. And what happened over the time, and this is where we got into all of this debt, electricity was politicized to get votes in those areas, especially in Nimba County. And people were just connecting, the power to get votes in Nimba and running up the bill.
Yeah,
And
but
running
before you
up-
go on, there had to be an agreement how
agree.
it would be paid for. What was the agreement in place for how it would have been paid for?
The thing is that, okay, so when you do a bilateral agreement, Liberia was coming out of the conflict. Madam Sirleaf was the first female president, democratically elected. President Ouattara wanted to kind of give her an extension. Electricity is important. I can't get it to Monrovia, but I can get it in on the cross-border side. And you can use this electricity to pay your bill, but you can use it to kind of industrialize and get your economy going. And that's where LEC, or the LEC leadership also failed, in that LEC never moved to the policy of the program of what? Of decentralization, to build a sub-office in Nimba County to manage that grid, or in Zwedru or in Plibo. So what did they end up doing? They created asset management agreement, and that's how Jungle Power ended up managing the Nimba grid. And that's how you now have LIB Energy that manages the grid down in Plibo and also in Zwedru. And then the World Bank funded, an extension of the Zwedru grid into River G. So now you have a third-party company that manages the southeastern grid, and you have Jungle Power that manages the Ganta grid. So don't forget, these grids are running, and there's a bill being accumulated. You get my point. And all of this money is supposed to be collected and paid to LEC for LEC to pay what? To pay back the Ivorians. You get my point, okay? Now, so let's fast forward. President Bouaka comes into office. Electricity is a big issue. And what does he do? He gets the previous CEO, chairman of the board, and a consultant to himself, and they go on a trip to La Côte d'Ivoire to meet President Alassane Ouattara and the Transco CLSG team. They go there and he makes an agreement with a new payment plan, to pay the bill. This took place in March of this year. Don't forget, these are not my opinions. These are facts.
Yeah.
So he goes there, he makes an agreement with the managing director, with the CEO, chairman of the board, and a consultant to the LEC, the same person, in one person in three positions, right? And they make an agreement, and they come back. And guess what? Côte d'Ivoire continues to provide the power. LEC continues to sell the power, collect the cash. But here it is today. Look at the letter that was sent from CIE. Go and read the letter. The letter indicates 3 bills. Look there. There's one for the cross-border grid that indicates the 3 grids that come across the border. And they tell you from what? From CIE through Transco. So when you talk about government owing the money, that's a whole different issue. That's an excuse. It's not a reason. It's an excuse. That's what LEC management has always used, because they know that people do not understand the business of energy. How can you sell the LEC tokens in Liberia, in Monrovia, collect the money, and don't pay the Ivorians, and the Ivorians send you a debt? And they send you a bill. Look at the bill.
I think we gotta separate a couple of things here. So what we have up here confirms what you just said in terms of the CLSG line, the CIE line, and the cross-border line. So we clearly see here up to date what the debt was before, and how much we've paid, and what is currently outstanding. So this is the payments that are being made. We do not deny that. So there are payments being made. What we do have, though, on the other side of this is consumer. And from the consumer side, we do show that there's a significant amount of debt that has not been paid, that is still outstanding. And that, we all know that is causing some major challenges. So it's about 20 something million dollars. Okay. We can't deny that. So we can't deny this number right here. This number right here,
yes,
has nothing to do. This number has nothing to do with the CLSG and all those various lines. These are the on collectibles. So what? And we also have
where did these numbers come from? Where did these numbers come from?
These numbers come from LEC website, and it also comes from the MCC. But this is up to date with what's going on. This is directly from LEC.
So, very good. So here is where we see the devil's in the detail. If you go back to the outgoing chairman of the board, the outgoing CEO of LEC, when you read his statement, his statement is clear that LEC has paid CLSG up to this amount over X amount of years.
This is it right here. This is up to date.
This is what we're looking at.
That's what we're saying.
I'm coming now. Yeah.
Okay.
Fine. Okay. Up to X amount of years. We don't want to know how much you paid over the years. We want to know what is outstanding today. Because the reality is this, right? The way the energy thing works is like this. Let me just give some depth and some understanding. So it's almost like when you go to Monrovia now and you buy You get there, you buy $25 worth of data and you put it in your phone, right?
Yeah.
When you put it in your phone, it tells you how much data you have.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
As
It's
you use
prepaid.
your data, it's prepaid. Very good. It's no
Yes.
different than the CIE power. So when you buy CIE power, when you get to the CLSG transformer substation in the Mount Coffee yard, there are 2 meters there.
Yes.
There are 2 meters. They're what we call custody transfer meters. One is receiving, one is the buyer, one is the seller.
Mhm.
So the buyer is LEC and the seller is who? Is CIE. You get my
Yes.
point, okay?
Mhm.
So when you buy your electricity, just like you buy your data, the meters are set where the both of them are what? They're even. You get my point.
Yes.
As you use your power, the business is that you're never supposed to let the meter get to zero.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Very important.
Yes.
So as you sell, because this is a on-time, online, live business, people are buying tokens every day. You're accumulating cash every day, every week. So you can say, okay, every bi-weekly, we're going to move back $500,000 back to Cote d'Ivoire. Every 2 weeks, we're going to move $500,000. Every 2 weeks, we're going to move $750,000 back so that they will recharge or reset the meter and bring it back up. You get my point?
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying? That's the way the business is supposed to work. Emphasis on supposed to work.
To work.
Because it's a cash flow business. And there needs to be understanding of those who are in management to run the business. Because everybody in Monrovia is buying meters, they're buying tokens. Now, LEC management's incompetence in deploying the right technology to mitigate, it is LEC's responsibility to collect the money from government. Why would you not put prepaid meters at government entities? Is it government responsibility or is it your responsibility?
Well, hold on. So remember, prepaid, of course, the collection rate is very good. But remember, we've just started doing prepaid in Liberia only a few years back. Not too much, just a few years back. So a lot of this outstanding debt that is on the books, the huge majority of it is actually because of postpaid customers. So basically, I used, then I paid. So the government postpaid is actually 18 million. The opening balance in 2024 was 18 million. Okay, and so the government hasn't been transitioned. But but we are getting to the political side.
Hang on, William.
Go ahead.
Hang on, William. Very good point. And this is where I challenge the LEC management. If any one of them are listening, let them pick up the phone and call the show. Give me if you don't have this is where the rubber meets the road. I see Jimmy is so intense in this thing. He's soaking up everything here, right? So Jimmy, tell me if I'm wrong and I'll be quiet. If LEC is saying, right, that the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of, Health and Social Welfare, Gender Ministry, owe them this amount of money. Bring the meter reading. Bring the kilowatt hours. Bring it. This is the point. The responsibility to deploy the right technology to mitigate your losses does not lie with the ministry. It lies with you. You are the authority. You are the knowledge-based person in the sector. You run the sector. So you have the responsibility, the obligation to bring into place. You can't say that we just brought prepaid meters. The internet is available to you. Alibaba is available to you. You couldn't find prepaid meters in China and buy them and deploy them at all of the ministries. I mean, explain this to me. Convince me that incompetence and lack of understanding did not play a major role in getting us to where we are today. This is my point. I mean, Gabriel, you are a banker. Right now, LEC should have taken all of the major customers who pay their bills and leverage that with a bank and let those payments be leveraged with a bank so that that bank can take those payments directly over to the Ivorians to maintain a constant flow of capital, of payments for the CIE. That's what they should have done because it's doable. I mean, even though it's for a fee, the bank would not do that for free. But even it can be done for a fee. Let's look at power theft, right? You talk about he breaks down power theft. Okay, let's talk about power theft. Why would you not bring in enough transformers? Why would you not bring in enough meters? Why would you not streamline the metering process, knowing that people will have a high demand and requirement to get connected to the grid, to improve their quality of life, start their small businesses, to pay their children tuition and provide for themselves? How would you come into the market with insufficiency where you have a high demand for power? That's incompetence.
But let's not.
Wait,
let's not
I
beat
thought
around
you
this
said
bush.
IB. The customers were paying to IB Bank. You said I thought you actually mentioned.
Yes, that IB. Yes, IB's job in this whole deal. They're an investor. They're not running LEC. LEC buys the meters. You see, again, one of the challenges we have here is the lack of creativity in the sector. If the
report says different. The report says different. The report says there was creativity. It was just creativity with corruption. There was creativity with the fact that we were overpaying and we were not getting the services that we were paying for. There was gross mismanagement. That's what the MCC. That's what the MCC report was saying. So
exactly, and whose responsibility is that? It's the management team of the LEC.
Well, it's amazing because the MCC report says it's not only LEC, but it also it said government contracts.
Yep.
It was clear, government and LEC, and the fact that LEC was not working in an unilateral way, and there was a lot of mismanagement.
And you know what happened? And you know why? You know why, William? You know why, Bill? Because when electricity becomes politicized, this is where you have the problem.
Okay,
when you politicize electricity and you use it for votes, you run a debt. It's almost like going to the bar and tell the owner of the drinking spot, anyone who come in here, just bring me the bill. Just bring me the bill. So the guy goes and start calling all his buddies from Nukutai and West Point and everybody, my man, the bar open or you let go. And then at the end of the day, the guy brings the bill. He said, "My man, my money shut." Yes, and this is where we end up. This is where we find ourselves.
Thank you. So, Phillips, I'm going to push you now because now we are at this point. We're at this space in Liberia right now, where the management has given us pretty much an idea of where we are. Okay, where we are right now, it is very clear. There are websites now. Before we didn't have website, we had to pick up the phone, call people, and say, "Hey, can I get these numbers?" Or you had to do some kind of extrapolation.
Very good.
But now everything is out in the open.
In the open.
And this guy has shown that we are able to generate revenue, that people are willing to pay ahead of time in advance for the electricity.
Prepaid.
So now, from where we are, do we have enough? Do we have enough to say, hey, we're going private sector? Or is this where we are, where we have to be shaking our hands, really trembling? Because now that cushion, that $233 million cushion is not there. And it doesn't look like, from all the numbers we've been seeing, it doesn't look like LEC is generating significant capital to move this thing forward.
Okay,
Am I
very
right
good.
or am I wrong?
No,
Where
Before
you
you
at?
answer, before you Elkanah, before you answer, I want to add
go
to
ahead,
that
Jimmy.
that man's question.
Mhm.
You see, you hit it on nail. We need a technical solution, either hydro, solar, and we also need a business solution.
And wind.
There
Where
you
you
go.
live in wind? We don't have wind there too.
Wind, yeah, so renewable energy. Let me just put a whole category: renewable energies, and
Renewable
also we
energy.
need a business solution. And I see you talking about a business solution a lot here. Before Ghana got the loan to build out Akosuma Dam, that was way greater capacity than the World Bank was wanted to give them. They secured a purchase deal from a mining company that they were going to buy.
Kaiser, very good point.
They allow them to get that.
Okay, Jimmy, let me. I must respectfully interrupt you here. I must because no, and I'm sure Jimmy's about to say hallelujah. Now, that deal was made with a company and a bauxite mining company or an aluminum company in the U.S. It's called Kaiser. Kaiser is in the business of bauxite mining and making aluminum. Bauxite is the major ore you need for aluminum. Okay, now, but the challenge is you've got to smelt it. And the process of smelting it requires a tremendous amount of electricity.
Energy.
That's exactly right. You're back to the same thing. So now, this is where Jimmy's point is so profound. Energy, as I said earlier on, energy is a what? It is a business. It is a business. So the businessman Kaiser comes up and he sees that Ghana has a need. And he has a need that presents a what? It presents an opportunity for him as a business in a nation that needs to grow and develop and prosper. So what does he do? Because he's an American company and the World Bank is also what? Run by the Americans, right? They do the deal. And why does Kaiser get in the deal? There's a company in Ghana. Go and Google. It's called Valco, VALCO. Valco gets a deal so that they will have a certain amount of capacity from that Akosombo Dam at a specific energy rate, which allows them to be competitive in smelting and exporting the aluminum. You get my point. The same thing came about with Liberia and Firestone in the U.S. government. The government of Liberia needed money. U.S. government said, we ain't got no money. But guess what? We'll connect you with a guy who wants land to play in rubber, and you guys can make your deal. Opportunity, two needs. You get my point, okay? How you guys make your deal, that's it. So here is where this is where the rubber meets the road, okay? If you do not have the business acumen, the bankers, Transco, if you Google Transco today and see who are the creators of Transco, they're bankers. They're bankers. It was the German bank, the European bank, the African Development Bank, the World Bank. They were all bankers that saw the vision of what this energy backbone could do for the Minor River Union. So they invested in it. And now we being a country, we didn't complete our part to bring the proper business acumen to the table to say, man, this infrastructure is our ticket out of the wilderness. This is our ticket. Now, William, to you, if you go back, right, bring up the number of subscribers or the number of connections from the LEC website. Let me just break something down for you.
247,000.
Very good. 247,000 meter connections, right? Okay. So there's a thing that we use in business, in the subscription service, when you're doing either internet or you're doing water or you're doing telecom, ISP, is called the ARPU, ARPU. Okay.
Average revenue per user.
There you go. Thank you, Jimmy. It's called the ARPU. This is the key metric. So if you do an RPU based on the numbers there in the LEC website, and you say, okay, the average Liberian can spend $10 a week. 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 $10 a we 10 times 4 weeks in a month. That's $40. So let's round it up to $50. Take the $50 and multiply by the number of subscribers there, and you will see what the revenue is per month. Okay, so access to electricity is different than the customers. So customers connected 240,000 times $50. Do the math. Let's do the math. Let everybody.
Oh, you mean it literally?
Is.
That's about 12 million. That's about 12 million.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. 12 million dollars a month. 12 times 4, 12 times 12 is what? Last time I checked, it's 144 million. It's 144 million. It's 144 million using the ARPU number just on $50 as a base number. That's exactly right. That's not my number. They put the number of customers up on their website. I didn't go there and put it there. They put it there. So let's use the numbers. So Percy explained this to me at $12 million per month. 12 times 12 is 144, $144 million a year. You want to tell me we're not able to invest in the right technology to increase our collections and expand the grid and leverage with the bankers to expand this grid across the different counties when Transco has already put in the substations? There's a substation in Cape Mount, Jimmy. There's a substation in Cape Mount. It's called the Mono substation for Transco. It's 50% the capacity of the Mount Coffee Dam. Imagine that the transformer is sitting there. And that transformer was put there on that grid as the last substation that goes before the line goes into Sierra Leone. It can provide capacity for Cape Mount, Bomi, and Bapolu. But guess what? There's no distribution grid. You don't have a distribution grid to move the power from the Mano substation to feed it out into those areas. So when you don't have the bankers sitting at the table to leverage, and that responsibility is the LEC management, who are what? Who are appointed by the president.
Yeah, that's the inefficiency with government, right? This will never happen in a private sector setting, right?
Well, but that's the reason, Percy. That's the reason why. I'll take your word. You brought it up on the show. Public-private partnership.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
So let's look at now. So we have the current management is outgoing.
Mm-hmm.
We have a new management team that is coming in, that has been put in there by the current administration.
Has somebody been appointed? Am I hearing that?
It's an interim management team. It's interim. It's interim. Yes, it's interim. Yes, an interim management team. Yes.
So we have the interim management team now. On that interim management team, from what the article says and everything, these are individuals with width, breadth, and depth from the technical side, and also a little bit from the business side. And also you have the board of directors. So do we have the right team? Two questions: do we have the right team, and also do we have financial resources now to move this thing forward? That's the key of the marketplace here. We're saying, is LEC independent? Is LEC independent?
Autonomous, really?
Yeah. Is it autonomous? Is it on a trajectory of advancing, going up, or is this something that will be a piggy bank? Right? With the money that's coming, will it be a piggy bank, Philip? We gotta be honest here. That election went over 40 million.
This is where the rubber meets the road, like I always say. Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right people in the right places to make the right decisions, you will always be guaranteed of one thing: wrong decisions will be made. And as a result, the nation, its people, its economy would not grow. It would not move forward. Like I told you before the show, look at the article from the outgoing advisor at the U.S. Embassy. What did she say in that article? Corruption. Liberia has to move from what? From aid to trade. And in order for that movement, okay, or that transition to be facilitated, it can only be facilitated with three things. One, solve corruption. You can only solve corruption in a developing country in one way. Increase the size of the private sector, reduce the size of government. Private sector side always has an anti-corruption strategy. What is it? I come to do my business, you steal my money, I lock you up. It's as simple as that. Government always got this long audit thing. I'm going to audit you, the audit report, and so forth and so on. Okay? So the way you solve it, you increase the size of the private sector and let the private sector solve their own issues. And then you reduce the size of government to become more efficient, reducing your operating costs of government. And you have a what? You have a major return on investment and a net dividend. Number two.
Mr. Phillips, let me ask a question, person. Okay.
Hold on. Let Philip.
And she said also in the article, the second thing is what? Is investing in electricity. Go to the front page Africa website. The article is right there. She said investing in electricity. Why? Because without electricity, you're not going to grow economically. You're not going to attract the foreign investors. You're not going to attract your diaspora. You know, many Liberians always talk about foreign investors. We were doing something on remittance on our business talk show. Liberia receives over $800 million in remittances. That's more than Mita Steel. That's person to person. That's more than our national budget. The Liberian diaspora population in the US, Canada, and the EU countries represent the largest investment entity to move that country forward. But that population cannot transform Liberia without electricity because electricity is all they know. You can't expect them to duplicate what they did in the US, Canada, and Europe in the dark. It's never going to work. And number three, she said the multi-user rail. Okay, on that one, American interest, American corporation.
Yeah.
Is,
you can see how that filters.
I understand. But at the end of the day, that multi-user rail, if emphasis on the word if you bring the bankers along every railroad across this US that we live in, right? You got cities, you got towns, and if you look at the building of the railroad in the US, the railroad always ran to connect the different cities and towns because those were the trading locations.
Right.
Yep.
So why don't we leverage Buchanan, our deep water port? Bon County can be an inland port, which is a central part of our country. And Nimba Yekepa could be our northern port as an inland port. And then because the iron ore is going to finish, but the railroad, if we do it right, we could feed, go look at the map, we could feed all the landlocked countries north of Nimba, north of Guinea.
Philip, we are touching on something that I can see we're going to have another show on. So you got to come back to our electricity.
Yeah, and that's why
wants to say something
about
that.
And that's why electricity powers up. Go ahead, Jimmy. I'm sorry.
You on point. That's why we really appreciate your wisdom. Yeah. The question I know Percy wants to ask: privatization of LEC. Will that be the solution then? Given the inefficiency of government, given the politicization of electricity, given the rampant corruption that has been the Frankenstein in our, wouldn't it simply be better to privatize it?
Very good point. Okay, so privatization, right? So let's break down the infrastructure of LEC so you can understand. So I can bring some understanding to the privatization side of Percy. I see Percy moving from side to side, so he's waiting to hit me on my point. Okay, so Percy, your point is right? So what they do in the energy sector, right? The utility grid has three sections. Right. You've got your generation assets. Okay, your generation asset. Very good. Then you got your transmission assets. The transmission moved the power from Monrovia to Kakata being a utilization point, okay? And then you got your distribution assets, right? And then the distribution can be primary and then sub-distribution to connect from the pole to the house. You get my point, okay? So the question now, when you say privatization, The question becomes, what segment of the infrastructure are you going to privatize? You
Okay.
get my point?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take, for example, right? We've got Transco. That's a private infrastructure. Even though, the 4 countries all participate in it, that's why they call it CLSG. But they play a very important role. That's why Transco does not operate outside of the fence. Keep in mind, Transco does not operate outside of the transformer yard. Their demarcation is the transformer yard. You get my point? So the country is supposed to do everything on what we call the 33 or the 35 kV side. They bring the power in the high voltage, you drop it to you, you pay your bill. What you do with it, what you don't do with it, that's your business. So what we need to do, we need to leverage it, right? So then that way you got to make the business case. You've got to make the business case. Do we continue bringing in more power from Transco CLSG through from CIE? Because when you do that, then you run the risk. It becomes a national security issue because now you are handing your prosperity to the hands of somebody else. You don't have energy independence, you have energy dependence. Okay? Now, the Transco grid, many people don't understand, is what we call a bi-directional grid. Okay? So it is a trading infrastructure, meaning that if you get the right people together that will use your private-public partnership, right? And let's say, for example, I want to invest in 100 megawatts. I want to build, I got my investors, and I want to build 100 megawatt capacity greater than Mount Coffee. But I want to do it as solar. And what I want to do, I want to put 25 megawatts in each of the counties where Transco has their substation, right? And I want to sell my power to either LEC or whoever can buy it off the Transco grid, because that's what the grid does. You see? So if the right mindset was there, you leverage the banking sector, because if Liberia has more capacity than her demand, the excess capacity can be what? Can be exported on the Transco grid. Then Guinea could buy it. Sierra Leone could buy it, because Transco is part of what they call the WAPP, the West Africa Power Pool, that connects, I think, 12 or 13 countries in the region. They move power back and forth. So it becomes a trading. So Liberia can now be like Cote d'Ivoire, and we can now export energy. You get my point. But the challenge here is, are the right people participating in this discussion, as you said earlier, William? Are the right people there? Because I believe that Liberia's future for energy independence should be 100% solar. Why? 2 things. Solar can be deployed rapidly. I do solar projects here for my company. Okay, we sell a lot of equipment. One of the things, if you notice, I don't know if you're not plugged into the energy sector in the U.S. In the old days, they used to build power plants. Okay, power plants used to take anywhere from 3 to 5 years to build. They're not building power plants in the U.S. anymore. You know why? Because of what we call BESS, battery energy storage systems. They come in 44 containers, and you can deploy 50 megawatts within less than 6 months. You plug them to the grid, they charge up, and they can discharge when you hit the button. They can power up a whole city. Go and Google it, BESS, battery energy storage systems. And the sad part is, I will end with this, the new solar power plant that they just commissioned at the Mount Coffee yard there, right? The sad part about that project is that, one, is overpriced, because the estimate is about $1 million per megawatt.
Yeah.
Who financed that though?
I'm coming now. And the next thing is, the system doesn't even have battery storage. It will only work from daybreak to sunset. There's no battery storage.
So there's no battery storage in that?
Yeah, we paid $90 million for it, overpriced.
Who are these people running the country?
Under whose administration? Was it this administration or the previous?
There was the World Bank thing. That is what the outgoing
look,
leadership.
But I think Phillips is seeing who is at the table making negotiations. I want to tell you.
You got
I
my
want to
point.
tell you something. They do not want certain people at the table. That is part of our problem. I have sat, I'm in telecom now. I moved from power in telecom now. I have sat with them. And even though they don't have the expertise to do, they rather have certain people there. And if that project fails, they don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care.
Okay, let me prove a point. I'm 1 minute, Will. You're into telecommunications, satellite technology, right,
Yes.
Jimmy? Okay, very good. I used to be an internet service provider in Liberia using VSAT. I had about 21 stations. I was doing connection for unmilled different government entities, and government owed me so much money. I just walked away. Take Liptelco, for example. How can Liptelco not be a profitable entity? When Liptelco owns...
That's what I'm talking about.
Liptelco, the government entity, owns the largest percentage of the submarine fiber that comes from Europe. Imagine that. But all the government officials have Orange and Lone Star phones. So we are basically subsidizing the competitors to Liptelco. Just understand that. Every government official, every representative, every director, every DM, every managing director has an Orange and Lone Star phone, and they get an allotment for that. But Liptelco, who is the government entity, the telecom buy for and of the people of the country, is starving. But yet it's still the only.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we see Phillips here.
You see, so this is that's just in the sector that you are, Jimmy. So I understand that 100%. I understand that 100%. So over to you, William. So that's where the challenge is. Privatization is good, but I believe if you bring the right people to the table to make the business case for the first thing is LEC needs to be decentralized. That's the first thing. LEC
Everything
must exist in every county seat of government. When you put LEC in every county seat of government, then you can now leverage the economy of Maryland County, the economy of River G, the economy of Grand Gita, the economy of Riverset, Sino, Grand Cru, with the bankers. And then you say, hey guys, if you deploy the infrastructure with the metering system, because everybody's investing in solar. And solar is fast. You can rapidly deploy it. I told Gabriel the other day, there's a very beautiful model, the Totota Co-op, the Totota Electric Co-op. This is an electric co-op up in Totota, connecting, I think, probably over 1,000 customers by now. And they have a small solar farm, a 40-foot container of battery storage with a generator that provides a backup to recharge the batteries on overcast days. And those guys have metering with their own power lines across the city, and people are paying for their metering. People are buying their tokens, and they're profitable. They are profitable. So if such a model can work in Totota, then I'll ask the same question that Jimmy said. Why isn't that model replicated or duplicated across all the major cities and across Liberia and integrate the grids? Why isn't it done?
Yeah. So I think what we are seeing here, Philip, and to the rest of the guys. Number one is we missed an opportunity, and I'm just kind of summarizing a few things, Philip, what you said. So just to be clear, number one, we missed an opportunity with the Transco and the CLSG because that was a space where now Liberia or private businesses in Liberia could have been the one supplying electricity at a wholesale price to other countries, maybe to Sierra Leone, to Ivory Coast, to Guinea, etc. Number two, you mentioned about the battery energy storage system, which is the new technology now that is currently being used, which is very scalable, and which doesn't require a lot of heavy investment in your infrastructure like a hydro plant would. And then lastly, we look at the whole management side. What is management looking like, and where are we heading? So with that being said, let's look at forward looking. Is there hope?
Well, Mr. Phillips, before you answer,
Go ahead, Jimmy.
We're implementing it's a 20 megawatts. This one at hydro.
Yeah, we got solar. No, we're implementing solar one.
Something right now, brand new, without the storage capacity that would have been the more prudent thing to do. So we are still making the same mistake.
And expecting a different result. Not the definition of insanity.
But we don't push back, because I have to push back for the viewers who are listeners. I have to be the one that maybe is the devil advocate here, right? So we all know what the Liberia budget is. If you look at the Liberia budget, I don't think there's anything in there significant about electricity infrastructure investment.
Right. There you go.
So we have this space where we as a country, as ourselves, maybe we can say the government is not putting money into electricity, but then also there may be potentially blocking private players from coming in.
But why would they block private player if LEC itself, as we just pointed out, right? It has 247,000 customers, and let's say we even Mr. Phillips even give a base assumption. Let's say we assume each customer is paying $50
more.
That's $144.
It is profitable entity within itself, right? It's a profitable entity within itself that is able to generate free cash flow every year and even give some of that to the government. That's one.
That's it.
The other point that I'll also make is I will even take a little bit of exception and play the devil advocate. Let's say we even say those 247,000 customers, right? We know in business, not everybody will be able to pay that $50. That was
agreed.
In business, you have to allocate for losses, right? If you assume each customer is going to pay $50 a month, you have to assume at least 80 to maybe 90% will be able to pay that amount. The other 20 or 10%, you assume that's going to be lost. Even with that base case assumption, LEC will still be profitable to be able to generate free cash flow on a yearly basis, right? So there's, in as much that we may not have enough allocation in the budget for it, it is a management issue, right? It's also a scalability issue with the with the LEC, and then there's also the business acumen in terms of really understanding someone who really can, scale the resources they have, which is the customer base that they have, to leverage that.
That's exactly right.
So
that's exactly
you have
right.
to look at it from that standpoint to say this is a profitable entity, a state-owned enterprises that can generate free cash flow based on the number of customers that we have. You can run 3 models: the base case, the up case, right? That means if everything goes well, that means everybody is paying $50. This is how much they will generate. Let's say we can even say if everybody is paying, the same $50, but we have 10% or 20% loss. This is how much it'll cost, right? This is still a profitable enterprise that can stand within itself and generate free cash flow. The problem we have, it is both from a business standpoint and people who do not understand how you have to model these things to grow the infrastructure based on the growth of the population each and every year to make sure that you keep up with the demand.
Right.
You want to say people want to grease their palm, huh?
No.
Before you opine, right?
Go ahead, Percy.
What Gabriel just elaborated on here, I assume everybody is we are all Liberians, right? And there's a standard way of doing things, and there's a Liberian way of doing stuff. That's what it said, right? And Gabriel just gave the standards, right? And that's a Liberian component to it, and that's where the inefficiencies and everything come into play, right? You assume, and that's what, because there's a political incentive in all of this, right? The president is too powerful; he's gonna appoint the managing director, whether he's competent or not, why not? There's a hit and miss here. So you could either you point the most competent person or the less competent person. So so to take that political incentive out of this, because it's so important to the country's survival and
There you go.
and
Yes.
economic viability and all that stuff, to take away the political incentive. I'm not saying take government out, but take the political incentive out.
That's exactly
so
right.
Private partnership. The government's still going to have a portion, but it's not going to be as dominant as it is right now, right? But the private part of it is going to be what's going to bring about the efficiencies and whatnot. Then government can go into, because most of the things we talk about here, look, when you talk to a relative back, when you hear how the LEC things goes, you'll be astonished, right? So
Right.
you want a meter, you go there, you buy a meter. That's not LEC. You can find any geek off the street and come and install that joint to your house, because you're using token, right? You're going to buy your token and whatnot. So you pay that guy $50, you're going, why? But LEC is supposed to be doing the thing from start to end, right? And the revenue is supposed to be transmitted back. The revenue is supposed to be transmitted back to LEC as revenue, right? And then it's going to go back. But in the process, there's this disjointed payment process here where we do the Liberian way, my man. And you can put a meter on, can't put my meter on. How much you charge me? $10. So LEC is losing money right there, because I don't know if the guy that doing the stuff, he's not directly with LEC, quote unquote, right? Maybe he's just a private contractor and he's charging his rate to whoever went and bought. So my thing is, there is the Liberian component that is bringing about all these efficiency, but there's also the government part where we don't have an address system in the country. To identify properties, you know what I mean? There is also the part where government have not identified not only properties but individuals, because when you pay your bill here, it have to be linked to a property. That property owner has to have a social security. You know what I mean? Those are all things. Those are not private sector things that's supposed to happen. This is our government responsibility to have this. This is the base. This is the backbone of a country, right? We don't even have that. You know.
Okay. Let me throw a couple of things in here, right? In the energy business, right? Just like Jimmy is in the internet business. Okay. When I was doing the internet business in Liberia, one of the things that gave me so many sites was I never charged the customer for the infrastructure. Okay. Never did. I only told the customer, pay for your installation costs. The agreement was clear. I own the infrastructure. You don't want to own this thing. You know, this is not your business. Why would you want to own a VSAT, a 1.2 meter VSAT? You don't want this thing. Let me take care of my side. You stay on your side. Just pay for the installation and pay for the capacity. And what that does, it lessens the cost. It's what we call the cost of connection. It lessens the cost of connection, and that allow the customer to focus on all they needed that infrastructure for was to get their internet. You get my point, okay? And then I cover the cost of the installation. If the customer was there for a year and he said, look, you know, we're shutting down, we're leaving the country, I send the text there, go there, pick our visa from there, bring it, we can reuse it to somewhere else. Okay. How do you relate that to the energy sector? Power companies, you see, this is where incompetence and lack of understanding kills the whole business. Electric meters are the POS system that generates the revenue for the power company. Your focus should be on connecting as many customers as possible, not keeping the meters in the warehouse. You don't make money until that meter is connected and the person is buying a token.
Yep.
So to charge the person $150 for the meter, and then you now take on the infrastructure, you take on the administrative costs, right? Jimmy, you're a businessman. You take on the administrative costs to inventory the meter, store the meters, program the meters, install the meters, and manage the functions of the meters. Before you start making money, this is my point. I've always said, LEC should have brought the meters in, get with Connex gas station, Aminata, SP, Petro Trade, and all the gas stations. Why? Because those guys are everywhere. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy. You're there, you're on the ground. And give the meter, set up, you know, you got enough technology to the Jimmy's, you know, he provides internet service, cut a deal, say, hey, Jimmy Eastman, I got 25 sites, I need you to put broadband capacity there, and you pass it on to the consumers. You build the portal, you put the meters there, and then you give all the customers in the population access to the meters. All you need is a serial number of the meter that goes in the billing system. So the guy can go to the Aminata gas station. Aminata making maybe $5 or $10 off of every meter.
Yep.
He goes there. The terminal is right there. Jimmy Eastman got his deal, providing the internet. The tablet is provided by the Wi-Fi hotspot is there, provided by Jimmy. It's a VPN, so nobody can browse Facebook or whatever the case is on the service. The tablet is there. You open up the form, person's first name, last name, mobile number, the general location. And then what you do, you submit it, put the meter serial number in the system. The person, everybody in Liberia has an email. Why? Because everybody's on Facebook. Facebook requires an email address before you get connected, and everybody has a cell phone number to get your Facebook code to log into your account. So the technology has already solved the problem. Everybody's connected on mobile technology for mobile money. So fintech is already integrated. But again, until you have leadership that understands this, so you could solve the metering problem very rapidly. And when the person pays a small fee for the meter, all you do is you subsidize the meter, get the meter connected, and start collecting money from the meter. You get my point? Because all the gas stations are open. They open early in the morning. They got, Smenotes, Unification Town, Dolos Town, Cotton Tree. Gas stations are everywhere. So you don't need to invest in building the infrastructure. You understand what I'm saying? So you bring the meters in, you disseminate the meters, so the person can go 9 o'clock to Roto Town to the gas station and say, look, I didn't really
Anytime, get a
want
meter.
anytime.
Anytime.
But the person, why this centralization of a system to maintain control and power? And this is what I'm saying. The lack of understanding of the energy business. That's what has us in this bottleneck. And that's why the economy cannot grow. And like Jimmy was saying, and you were saying, Percy, if people understood the role that energy played in growing the economy, you would be making massive investments in the budget every year. Why would you take Mittal Steel's county development funds from Grand Bassa County and bring it to Monrovia, or telling Mittal, look, the $2 million you're going to give me this year, build a grid. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy. You collect, the man's giving you $2 million a year. So look, for the next 5 years, I need these cities, these towns connected. Put the money into building the grid. The only condition, you must hire all Liberians. Grand Bassa County has a community college or university today graduating engineers who are unemployed in the county. And the county has a Transco substation, 50% the capacity of Mount Coffee Dam. Imagine that. But the county is in darkness. So what sense does that make?
Oh my God.
You're collecting county development funds, and this is the system that Ellen set up. Very brilliant system. Every concession Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, tell me. Every concession in Liberia, in every county, pays county development funds. But the question is, where are the development funds going? They should be going to develop the energy infrastructure, which are foundational to building the local economy in the county, so that people like Jimmy then can bring investments, cyber cafes, clinics, and everything into the county. So there's like you said, Percy, there's a disconnect between the role energy plays or must play in developing the county. You got how they call the company, Equatorial Power down in Riverside or Grand Bassa. They ain't got no power there, but they're paying county development funds. But the substation is in Buchanan, and they still haven't yet built a line. But they got to process palm oil to export. But they're running generator, but they're buying fuel.
Oh my God.
So,
oh my God.
So here's my follow-up question from the
Gabriel, one more follow. You got a last follow-up questions, and then we're gonna wrap up with everybody.
Here's my follow-up question from the business side of things, in terms of making sure. I know we kind of we beat down on management that they may not have the expertise, the knowledge, which is evidence in the report that we're seeing. But we have to look at basically, again, I go back to the cost of connecting each customer. And I think you alluded to that. If, like you perfectly said, if these meters are decentralized and brought to these, you know, gas stations where they're easily accessible, the thing that LEC management need to think about is how much does it cost to bring each customer online on the grid, right? You look at that and say, okay, how much does it cost to bring each customer online? Now you have to take it back to how much am I getting for each customer per month, which we assume this is a broad-based assumption. It's $50. How much does it cost to bring each customer on the grid? How long does it take for me to break even before I even start making profit?
That's exactly
Right?
right.
So you're not looking at just, oh, I want to bring, you're looking at it just from a customer base. And from what we see in the report, there's 3 business lines. There's the regular consumers, there's the businesses, and then they have the NGO that actually get, I think they get the electricity at a discounted price. So you have to look at each one of these and say, how much does it cost to bring each one of them online? How long does it take? If I bring them online, let's say $100 per customer, how long would it take before I even make that $100 back before I can make a profit? Right? So those are the things, basic. I mean, sometimes I think we look at the high level aspect of it, but from a management standpoint, you have to be able to look at it from that level to understand what we call the unit cost to associate it with each customer. Then you can make sense of the higher level. You can look at it from a step up basis to make sense of the bigger picture. So I think that's some of the things we need to look at. How much, in as much that we think that this is an easy process, we need to look at how much does it cost each business line to bring them on the grid. How much does it cost before they recoup, right? After you recoup, you break even, which is a break even point. Then you now start making cash flow. It could be sometime based on the type of customer, maybe it would take over a year before you break even based on the cost of the material.
Isn't all that in the business case, Gabriel? That's the business
There
case.
you go. That's the business case. But
That is the point that I'm making, right? And I think
what Jimmy is saying is that mindset, right, is not at the table. Am I correct, Jimmy? That mindset is not at the table. They're not at the table. They're not at the table, Gabriel.
Are we saying they're not looking at it that way?
No, they don't.
They're not looking at it that way.
They don't have the.
If they were looking at it, we would not be here talking about.
Thank you very much. That's the confirmation. That's it right there.
Gabe, let me give you one classic example. I went to Telcom, the senior LTC where Phillips was talking about. The man there, the managing director there, is talking about building 5G connection. There was a project. We even went there and tried to initiate. I don't know, you were initiating 5G. You don't have basic 4G. 5G is not a standalone technology at this point. You don't have basic 4G, but you want to build 5G because the person who is at the helm, doesn't understand anything.
Doesn't understand anything.
But he's heading it, and that is what we see replicated all over.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and the thing is, if you look at Liberia today, right? If you look at Liberia today, the role that telecommunications, right, plays in the energy infrastructure is so vital because I sell metering, right? There's a metering unit. I can put a transformer in Bonneville Estate. I can put 4 transformers, 6 transformers in Bonneville.
My hometown there, though.
Build a 35 kV ring around the city. Put in 500 kVA transformer at strategic points, 35 kV to 22 kV to 440, 220, and build a ring. And I can put the metering there and put SIM cards, data SIM cards in the metering, to bring back all the data, okay, on how much energy in terms of tokens can be sold, okay, in that estate. It would tell you. It would tell you kilowatt hours consumed, which should equal to what? The revenue sold, because you can put the equation in there. 25 cents per kilowatt hour equal X amount, right? And then on a daily basis, you can take that data and feed it back into what? To the commercial department, which is collecting the tokens from whoever is selling the tokens inbound of the estate. You see, and you can know where power theft is taking place. Because if you have a large variance, right? Gabriel is not what they call it, a large variance, just like you, Jimmy. If you know you got high packet loss on your connection, you know that what? That link is a weak link. Something is misaligned because you're getting high packet loss and you can correct it. But again, if the knowledge base is not there, sitting at the table to make the decisions, and people don't understand the role that energy plays in telecom. Telecom is one of the number one bleeders of the Liberian economy. What do I mean by that? The two biggest cell phone companies in the country are not Liberian-owned companies. So they export all their earnings.
Yeah.
Every dollar that Orange makes in Liberia, they pack it and they export it. Yep. So you got to understand that these infrastructure, these telecom infrastructure, beside the infrastructure, the economy of a country is built on three things. One, the people. Mm-hmm. Two, electricity. Three, telecommunications. That's it. Well, so if your telecommunication companies are foreign companies and you're bringing in all of this money, guess what? They're hauling all of that money out. You're not going to see the economic growth. You're not going to see it. In the old days, they got, yeah.
This is, look, we want to get you guys to give your closing statement. I don't know, Philip, if that was part of your closing statement or not, but let's just take 1 minute each. But seriously, right? The outgoing manager did a press release on November 24th. And it's a very comprehensive, very solid. So now we had a baseline for the new management that's going to be coming in, right? And if we thought it was worse during this current person, we have no idea what it was way back. And also the way forward is very critical. I'm telling everyone right now, it's very critical. We had a good place, meaning to go up if we do the right thing. And so that's crucial. Secondly, there's nothing stopping any Liberian or Liberians from coming together and going and make the case that we want to own 30% of Orange, 30% of Lone Star. Let's get some money and let's buy a portion of that. Nothing is stopping us. With that being said, please, gentlemen, closing statement. I'll start with you, Jimmy, and then Percy, and then
we got started with Phyllis. But anyway, look,
Philip is going to take us home. He's our guest now, Jimmy. Right. He's our guest of honor.
Look, the opportunities we've missed several opportunities. What was the famous saying? We squandered opportunities.
Yeah.
But there's opportunities in front of us. Are we going to make our selection based on tribal affinity, popular politics, or are we going to look for people, competent people, dedicated and honest, who have the requisite expertise to lead these institutions? And the other thing I will conclude with, we have to start looking at decentralization in so many aspects. We stuck in 1847. They love to refer to 1847. We're stuck there when it was just a Christopolis, a little city. We're a whole country now. Why are we still doing things like before? We have to change. We have to evolve. And the data is there. So I hope we see something new with this new administration. A different way of looking at things. I'll leave it right there.
I'm hopeless. Jimmy, you are hopeful. I am hopeless. There's nothing about Liberia that tells you that anything is going to change fundamentally in the next 6 years. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The budget behind me tells you that. Look at how we spend money. What are we spending it on? Look at those numbers. It tells you everything. This budget have been like this since Ellen Johnson said it came to power. This is the structure of our budget, right? You look at the private sector investment part of it, it's minuscule compared to what we pay big shots and fat cats. What's happening in Liberia? The reason I'm hopeless is we mismanage our money, we mismanage our tax dollars, and then we go out there to people like or who have their citizen who have invested in their citizen, just like us. We have our citizen, people who have built schools and universities and everything to train their population to be productive at the end of the day. We go to those people, those citizens get up every morning, just we all get 24 hours in a day. We get to these people then to these countries and say, we beg you, please give us some money, some of your money, what your citizen gave you, your tax dollar. You please give it to us so we can help ourselves. Meanwhile, look at how we spend our own money. Look at the amount of, look at the ways we spend our money. So if you are a Liberian and you're thinking about what your lot is going to be in the next few years, and you look at this budget structure and you look at everything else that compounds with it, there's nothing to be hopeful for. There's not, Liberia is not turning a corner, right? They might build you, they build your solar station with no batteries. That's not a government that's thinking about you futuristically, because they wouldn't want you to have, because basically they want to give you electricity for a few hours in the day, and then once it get dark, it's nothing. A proactive government will have batteries there. So my citizen needs to have electricity 24/7. And again, this electricity, this energy thing, I'm sorry, not electricity, but this energy thing is an Africa problem. We're just talking Liberia portion. But when you hear even when you hear South African talking about the power problems, you'll be like, "But damn, I thought you guys were way ahead of everybody on the continent." That's a problem. This is a problem. This is an African problem, and Liberia is just worse because we are being mismanaged for a very long time, and our current leaders doesn't have the capacity, or they doesn't think like years ahead. They only think about now, and so. I'm not a hopeful Liberian at this point. It's absolutely not. I'm sorry to be dystopic, but there's nothing in Liberia right now that tells you that your children are going to be better off than you. Absolutely nothing. But that's my closing.
Gabriel?
Philip, 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Well, first and foremost, I'd say thanks to you guys for giving me the opportunity to be on the platform. I think it was a very, very healthy discussion. I'm optimistic. I'm very, very optimistic. I started this discussion on the energy sector well over a year ago. I haven't stopped it. We were able to educate, inform, and enlighten a tremendous amount of people about the role energy plays. I think one of the, and I still believe it. Because like you rightly said, Percy, the budget is a confirmation of all of my points. There's a general lack of understanding, and it's just, people just don't understand the role that energy plays. And sometimes it's so frustrating for them to not understand it. And especially those who are also participating in the writing of the budget, who gain their education from these United States, in developed countries, where energy played a major role in them gaining and experiencing what they have and what they're doing back in Liberia today. And they cannot make the connection. But I believe that shows like this, having these type of discussions on a regular basis, you don't cut down a big tree by just taking the axe and throwing it one time. You have to repeatedly, intentionally, purposefully, and deliberately keep hitting it from place to place around it, and it eventually falls. And that's what we have to do. There's a lot of educating. There's a lot of, we got to remove a lot of ignorance. Ignorance doesn't mean people are stupid. It simply means that people just don't know. And then we have bad habits, right? So insanity is the order of the day. What do I mean by that? We keep doing the same things over and over and expecting different results. And that's why we have to teach, we have to educate, we have to highlight, we have to use the technology, make the proper connections. I've been reading about Jimmy for a while, but I haven't, connected with him. But today, now we're connected. He's in a sector that I play a very important role in that sector. I never knew about Gabriel. Gabriel got connected to me through somebody. So these discussions are very, very healthy. We were supposed to have our show today on Business Talk, where we talk about energy as a major player for rebuilding the economy in Liberia. But again, the radio station that we broadcast on couldn't go on live because LEC, the dry season, the lack of a dry season strategy for the country, for the LEC, is where the country is today. So again, we have to keep doing this, speaking about this, educating, enlightening, and making the right connections. And then I will add with this. One of the greatest challenges here, Jimmy, you may mention it. The reason why they don't want the right people in the room is because the economics transforms the politics. That's the key. When the economics change as a result of energy, electricity, the politics change. And once the politics change, you can't go back to the business as usual. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Gabriel, take us home. I mean, you've said everything. I don't want to even add to it. Gabriel,
Yeah,
please.
I'm good. I'm good. Let me just close it out. Thank you guys for watching. See you next Saturday.
Okay. Okay, guys. Have a great evening. Be safe.
Stay
Bye.
on, Phillips. Stay on for a second.
Okay. Okay.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Liberia.